Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Today we are going to take you over to the Ukrainian and Russian war that is going on, but we're going to take you to kind of a different aspect of that, and that is the moms and the women that are left behind. Something that I think that we are very spoiled here in America. We don't really think about what happens when your husband goes off to a war that he's unprepared for, or when a war occurs and maybe in some cases the men just leave the family, and the men who come home are suffering from PTSD, and sometimes they leave the family. What we haven't heard in the United States enough, I think, is that there is a massive amount of women who are not only on the ground fighting, but they are in the house fighting with their kids every day to make sure that they have food, to make sure that they have clothes, to make sure that their kids are getting an education in the middle of a war zone, something that we just don't experience here. We have so much protesting and so many people on either side of these wars that are going on worldwide who really have no intimate connection to what's happening on the ground. And I got this pitch. It's sometimes, you probably wonder how we decide which podcasts we want to do, but every so often something comes in my email box and I go, wow, that is something I want to know more about. And I hope you guys want to know more about it too. So we are blessed today to have Kristi with us and Oleksandra Abramchuk, both people who are working with groups in Ukraine. Oleksandra, she came to the United States from Ukraine. She is one of those moms. Kristi she assists with a special project at an Illinois-based Slavic Gospel Association. The gospel ministry partners with local evangelical churches and ministry pastors in Ukraine and the former Soviet Union. And like I said, Oleksandra is a young mother who has come to the United States, but she has many stories. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
If we can start, Oleksandra, with you a little bit about your story and the experiences of mothers that are going through this in Ukraine. You came to the United States because of this destruction and death and destruction daily in Ukraine.
Yeah, so actually we didn't plan to come here, and as you know, for men, they don't have this opportunity to leave the country. They should stay, and until they're 60, they should be there in Ukraine. But for my husband, he got an opportunity from his job to go abroad. I was 8 months pregnant then when he called me and said, I'm abroad, would you mind coming to me and we can be in a safer place? And I didn't plan that, we didn't plan that, but God really showed us this path that we can take, and for our baby to be born in a place where there is no rockets flying over their heads. But it was hard because all of a sudden I had to say goodbye to my family, to my parents. They are still waiting to meet their grandson, their first grandson. I had to say goodbye to my sister, and she's really struggling being there alone. To my brothers, I have two brothers, 17 and 14 years old. They also have their own struggles, going to school, having to stay half of the day in a shelter because of the air raid siren. But it was a hard choice for me, but I have to decide either to stay with my family, parents, siblings, or to be with my husband, because if he came back home from his job, we didn't know how would it end up, and it was the choice that I have made to give my son an opportunity to be raised up with his dad, or like if you remain in Ukraine, there is a high chance that you end up raising your child alone, because men are either in the army or wars. So that's how it happened to us. So we came to the United States last September. It's been more than a year now. It's a blessing for us to be here, to be like in a peaceful place, but still we have this heartache for our families and for our nation.
Wait, at what age do the men get recruited into the army?
So starting from 25, but once you're 18, you cannot leave the country.
So your brothers, you probably worry quite a bit about your brothers.
Yeah, he's 17, and next year he has like the last year to decide whether to remain there or to go anywhere abroad. But again, it's the choice that my mom has to make, and for her, she doesn't want to leave my dad alone. So it's another difficult choice and decision.
Kristi, how did you connect?
Well, my husband and I got married 41 years ago, and he was an aerospace engineer at that time. But we left aerospace about 17, 18 years ago. Now, actually, it's been 23 years now to come into ministry with Slavic Gospel Association. Eric is the vice president of ministry operations and oversees all of the different ministries. And so he is gone about a third of the year. But I have this really great opportunity to travel with him maybe 1 or 2 times a year to different countries that we support. And we do pastor and wives conferences while we're there. And I met Oleksandra about 3 years ago now because we had taken some pastors and wives over to Turkey for a gathering. And so we connected right away because that was right after, pretty close to being right after the war started. And we connected right away. But my ministry is to pastors' wives. And so when I go over with my husband and we travel together, we try to take the pastors and their wives out of their normal environment because a lot of them work and serve very, very hard, long hours. And so we bring them to a retreat center and we give them an opportunity to just sit together, first of all, with their spouse, to be able to communicate with other people who are in the same place that they are. The ministry over there is difficult even without the war. But in about a year and a half ago, I was able to travel there and bring those couples out of a war-torn area. And Oleksandra with us at that time too. And we heard story after story of how these couples were serving people in their churches, the ones that had stayed, the ones who were struggling there at home, the ones who were leaving and trying to find different places to find a new home. But I've had the opportunity to just sit and chat with wives, with pastors' wives, with single moms, with young women who don't have kids. And it's just been a huge blessing for me to be able to make this connection with the women there.
You have some stories. The Slavic Association, or the Gospel Association, has shared some of these stories of young women who are raising their kids by themselves. Tell us a little bit about those women who are on their own. One single mom, Alina, she is working by herself. Her windows were actually shattered by a drone that went over. Her children were injured. She's actually leaving them at night and hoping to see them in the morning. I think this is something we don't actually think about here. Like I said, we're so spoiled here in the United States to think that these women are alone. They have no family around. They have to work now. Maybe they were able to stay at home with their kids before, but their husband gets taken off to war. Then they get the call that they're alone for life, that their husband has died, and she leaves at night to work, and her kids are by themselves.
And this is story after story after story that we're hearing about these women. And loneliness is one of the biggest things. First of all, these women are dealing with the grief of losing their husband. They're dealing with the grief of their expectations of a marriage and you marry for life. And so you don't all of a sudden just get cut off and don't have your spouse anymore in most cases. And so these people are lonely. They're dealing with the fact that they're playing the role of mom and dad. And I know that there was one story that came in that she said that the hardest thing that she had to do is raise her 14-year-old and 15-year-old sons, because she didn't know how to teach them how to be a man. She didn't know how to teach them how to even serve their families or be the leader of their families, because now she's trying to not only be mom, but she's trying to be dad too, and she's learning herself. some of the women have shared stories about having to pick up the roles of the husband as well in working, for one thing, and providing for the family, but also just doing the little things around the house that they don't normally do. They have to listen to their children say, "Why isn't Daddy coming home tonight?" And to take on that emotion that they're dealing with themselves. I know one other lady wrote to us and said, "I basically have to force myself not to break down and lay down on the floor and cry while I'm trying to help my kids." These ladies have to take, sometimes I know Oleksandra can tell you a lot more about that too, but they take their children into the shelters. Even in the middle of the night, they have to get them up out of bed and take them to a shelter. So this emotional load that they carry of just not having a normal life, a normal family, is quite burdensome. It's heavy. It's a very big weight. I think I've explained before that what I saw when I was in Ukraine and just observing as I walked, that there were all of these buildings that had been destroyed. And so you see that as you're driving, yet you see a mom in a stroller, walking her baby in a stroller, or kids at the park with mom preparing a lunch or picking her kids up from school. And so under this umbrella of wartime and drones and missiles and, hearing the sirens all the time, the women are trying so hard to keep some sense of normalcy for their families, and they have to fight for it. It's not coming easy.
Oleksandra, on the ground when you're there, what is it like for those women to hear, or for, I guess, anyone in Ukraine to hear about the worldwide battle of, do we support Ukraine? Do we extend this war? Do we try to go after Russia? What are people thinking on the ground? Do they want intervention? How do they feel?
I would say half and half. Half of the people, they think that, okay, we will do whatever we can and we'll make our best and we fight. And that's why when the war began, we didn't rely on anyone, and many men volunteered and joined the army. I remember my husband went to also volunteer and join, and they said, sorry, we have no weapons, because so many men went to fight. So our people wanted to be the first there to fight and to protect and defend their country. But now, as we see that we have so many lives lost already, and we are short of weapons and everything, of course people count on other countries, and they come to the point when they think, please do whatever, intervene. We just want it to end, not because we are so, maybe it's our a big expectation or something. We just want people to stop dying. That's it. We don't ask for anything more than that. Just please, we don't want to see death and destruction no more.
I saw a story of a mother who had left her son overnight at her mother's house. And of course, I think about the number of times I've left my children at my mom's house for a sleepover with grandma. And he requested, let me stay. I want to be with grandma overnight. And she said she hesitated. No, we should go home. But he wanted to stay there, and she let him stay. And the building was bombed, and he was the only casualty. He lost his life that night. She had already lost her husband because he had gone off to war, and she lost him in the war. Then she lost her son, and the incredible pain you could see in her eyes as she was going through that guilt of, why did I leave him? I cannot imagine having to deal with the immense questions of, where am I safe on a regular basis?
It's complicated, and even I have friends, young women, and they were thinking, should I do anything to protect my husband? We have 2 kids. What if we have 3? And then the men with 3 kids, they get special reservation and they cannot be called up to army. unless they volunteer. So they face this choice, and they think, on the one hand, they always wanted a big family. It's not something that came up just now, but they say, we can have one more child, but then is it fair to this child be born into the war? Like, how can we make it to that baby and suffer and hear all these air raid sirens and the bombing and explosions? But again, like, what if I lose my husband and then my 2 kids, they lose their father? Like, what if I can avoid that? So do I do anything for that? So it's a real choice and decision that they face. And I have 2 friends that they got their 3rd baby this year, and it's so complicated for them because, yeah, on one hand, they're men, they are safe, but then having 3 kids and you have to wake up in the middle of the night, grab them all together and go anywhere. We don't have special shelters.
Because you have to leave the house to go to a shelter.
You have to leave the house, yes, because when the rocket is flying over you and another rocket hits it down, the debris, they can explode, they can fall on your house, the house can go on fire, and actually those debris, they cause that destruction more often than the rocket itself, because sometimes the rockets are hit down in the air, but then when they fall down, they destroy houses. So the people have to go anywhere to a safer place. It's usually just a cellar. We don't have special shelters as in Israel, where people prepare and expect war, but for us it was out of the sudden, and we were never prepared for these kind of things. So they are sleep deprived, both mothers and kids. They have sometimes they become hysterical because their nervous system is immature itself, but then on top of that they have to experience these traumatical things. Can't imagine that.
No, devastating. Kristi, what do you guys do on the ground there? How does the SGA help?
SGA helps the local churches first and foremost. We have there has been so much going on. There has been doors have been opened in the churches, and people are coming that maybe would have not ever even come through a church door before. But through these churches, they are ministering to the families that come first and foremost. People have had to leave the front lines and come in further inward. And so in these churches, there's conversations, there is food and beds and necessities for toiletries and things like that. So they take care of their physical needs. There's been a lot of humanitarian aid that has been handed out. And they just take the time, first of all, to meet those first physical needs. And then, most importantly, that spiritual need. They share the gospel. They sit and they have a conversation with everybody coming through the door. They meet them in the place that they are. And then they take the opportunity not to leave it just in that church, but then we have many programs for widows, for compassion ministry, where they're going out to the homes and trying to see where people are needing food. We have Heat and Hope ministry, because the winter is coming and it gets really cold, and the heat has been a challenge, and so we're trying to do what we can to be able to heat their homes. We had summer camps, even in the midst of war. Summer camps were going on where kids got to escape for 1 week to be able to come and not worry about the sirens. Might have still gone on, but the joy of just being surrounded with happiness and fun was really great. And have a Christmas program coming up where we do celebrations of Christ's birth, and we are ready to share. But it's all through the local churches, and the local churches reach out to their communities and be that light that they so need to see right now.
We had heard when President Trump was elected, he talked quite a bit about the fact that he wanted to see these these deaths stop, that there's 300 or 3,000 people dying a day, and that we're seeing this war just rage on. And again, here we don't think about what it means to have an entire generation of men lost. We've read about it. We've certainly read about the Great Depression and what that was like, and women going back to work and women playing sports games to try to keep the country in a positive mood. And that was that. But that's, for us, that's history. That's something that we don't connect to. It didn't happen to our generation. What do you see, Oleksandra, on the ground when you talk to people back home, and for your own family, but for these women? What do they see as the future? If this war does end, how do you rebuild if you don't have men?
Many people don't think like that far, because what they think is like, do I survive tomorrow? Okay, let's make it one step at a time. And it's actually the truth. People stopped planning vacation. They stopped planning renovation in their house, whatever. We have to make it till tomorrow, and we will see. And we can already see the consequences of this ongoing war. In August, when my brothers were about to start the school, it turned out that there is no transportation for them. And many parents started to write letters to the government, what happened, why there is no transportation. And the fact is that there are no men to be
drivers.
To be the drivers, and there are not enough women to replace them because they're already on other working places. And it's already one of the things that you can see. Or it was the season of harvest, also August, September, and the fields were not like the harvest was not gathered because there were no men who could use a tractor and go and take it all. So our economy suffers from that as well. Or there are now, my sister wrote me, and I keep receiving messages that there are huge power outages in Ukraine because last night they bombed the electrical plants, and what they tried to do is destroy our energy system, since when they cannot prevail on the battlefield, what they try to do is make people even more depressed by even taking such usual things as electricity and heating in your home. And now my family stays without heating and light for half of the day, and it's only the beginning of the winter season, because in Ukraine it begins in early November. So imagine for people and for young families with kids, being the winter, no heating, no light. You can cook food properly, you can heat your child. We've been there, but we didn't have a child back then, and it was complicated. You cannot work. I remember working online, and you had only 2 hours per day when you had electricity. So you either cook or do your laundry, and sometimes you spend days without even having a warm meal or wearing, fresh clothes.
It's something we don't even think about here. I mean, if we have our power out for a few days, we just think that this is like a complete government shutdown. How could this possibly happen? But I think the weather in Ukraine, I'm in Michigan, I think the weather in Ukraine is somewhat similar to the weather that we have here in Michigan, and we are also headed into winter. And certainly we cannot imagine having this situation where you just don't know if you're going to have heat, you don't know if you're going to have energy. The ongoing war, what was Ukraine like before this? Were there regular concerns of bombings?
Never.
It was just a Western country.
We've never thought even of such a thing, and we were oriented on developing and having strong European connections, and just we are a young country. Ukraine became independent in 1991, so it's like in her 30s,
Right.
It was with a lot of ambitions, actually.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned the harvest. I think for people that are listening, they need to understand that Ukraine is critical to Europe when it comes to, I mean, you're considered the breadbasket of Europe. You're considered the area where all of the flour is harvested. So the majority of what Europe is using to make their own food, you would think that there is a great concern over whether or not Ukraine survives this, because certainly you don't want that kind of resource to fall into the hands of Russia. So really your economy is built on manufacturing and agriculture, and those two things are very heavily focused on men to make sure those industries are successful.
Yes, and I remember my friends, I have friends in Spain, and they wrote me last year that their price on groceries rose up because of this fall down in our economy, and because of we couldn't produce that much salt and oil, the price on their olive rose up highly.
Well, that's what, and obviously we know that there's a motive behind Vladimir Putin going in there. He wants to take it over. Certainly there's a concern of, if you get Ukraine, what's next? Does he go to Poland? We've been talking about all of these things in the United States, but we're very far removed, and I think it's easy to forget the struggles on the ground. These mothers who are alone. Tell us some of the stories of loneliness, Kristi, that you've been able to. We've seen some of these women band together and say, we decided as a group we're going to raise our children. We're going to try to raise up strong sons. At the same time, they're learning to use weapons. They're learning to defend themselves. They are also wearing army fatigues and going out and fighting. There's got to be a massive fear of not only being alone, but also their children being raised without them, because certainly if they're going out to the front lines, that's dangerous too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this has been just a great struggle for the women. It's very sad. It grieves our heart that there's so many men who are dying, for sure, and we can't ever neglect to think about that as well. But these women who are left behind or trying to do this on their own are carrying just this heavy weight that is, when it's a physical weight and an emotional weight and a spiritual weight, there's really not a safe place unless you are intentionally looking for something different. And I think that, I have a story that actually Oleksandra and I gathered together of one of my friends who actually, this is a missionary pastor who works in Ukraine near the front lines, and he goes in every day, every week. They load up a van and they go straight to the front lines. They deliver food, they deliver what they can for all of the people who are left near the front lines. And then they drive as fast as they can back again. They load up again and they go right back. And they're risking their lives. They're doing that every day. He's not in the military, but he's serving. He's part of Slavic Gospel Association. Now his wife, Natalia, every morning gets up and helps him get ready and puts on all of his armor that he needs, because there's a good chance that he won't come back that day. He needs to be protected. And so there was one day that he didn't make that normal phone call that he was supposed to make to just let her know that he was okay. And she got really upset, and she was just really worried about him. And he finally did make the phone call, or she got a phone call, but it was from another person who had said that he ended up getting hurt out there. And she said that it's just the unknown, the not knowing, am I going to lose my husband today? Am I going to be able to raise my kids? We've had story after story of moms who have said, they're exhausted. They don't know how to make it through a day. They get up and they move forward, doing what they know they're supposed to. Just like Oleksandra said, we don't think too far in advance because we have to make it through today. And so they don't plan as many wedding showers or even weddings or baby showers. The norm has completely gone. And it's just trying to make it through a day. They're exhausted from their work. they're working now, but then coming home in the evening and still doing all of the things that a couple usually does together in keeping a home. And so all of the stories, they may have different names and they may have different homes or different communities, but the big thing is these women are doing it on their own. And so we're thankful that they do have the support of the churches, because a lot of them are getting help. A lot of them do have a woman who can come and sit alongside them and have a conversation and encourage them. They can maybe even take their kids for a couple of hours to say, have some free time. They're doing Bible studies. You're seeing a lot of women who are coming into the churches for that.
What is that like? I mean, this is the former Soviet Union. There was not a lot of ability to hear the gospel in the Soviet Union. So this is probably a lot of unchurched people that are hearing the gospel for the first time, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. They are. And we have seen a lot of people accepting Christ and their lives are completely turned around. So the people who are being steadfast that had faith before aren't like running and giving up, or what they're doing instead is they're getting stronger. They're trusting God more. They're moving forward. They're trying to figure out how they can help others. And then the ones walking through the door that have never heard it before, they're seeing something different in the people of the church. They're seeing that they're wrapping their arms around them, and they're meeting their needs, and they're making sure that they're safe, and they're coming close to them and lifting them up and encouraging their hearts. And maybe it is just through a conversation or a hug or sharing the gospel, getting a warm.
I really think that's the biggest story here, and I understand the whole, you're looking at war, you're looking at death, you're looking at loneliness, but in the midst of this, God is affecting lives. And I think that's the power of women who are out there that have sons that say, I don't know what's going to happen to my son. Having the gospel there, we've heard so many stories of young men in Ukraine that walk into a Bible study, that walk into a church, and they go, this is different than the doom and gloom that I see outside of the church. And I do think that God does miracles. God does miracles every single day, but the church is beyond those four walls, and it is being seen. I hear that it is being seen on the ground. We've had so many people who are in Eastern Europe, missionaries who are in Eastern Europe, and even our own church had young men come in and go, I had no reason to keep living. Like, I really didn't see any positivity. I was stressed. I mean, the post-traumatic stress disorder is not just the older men or the men that have gone to war. It's the young men as well. Well, I lost my father. I didn't have any hope. I walked in and I saw Jesus, and I saw something totally different than I'd ever seen before.
Yes. Yeah.
That to me is the miracle in this.
Mm-hmm. At SGA, I have the privilege of leading a storytelling ministry, and Oleksandra was actually one of our storytellers for quite some time. But what they're doing is they are observing what is happening and how God is at work through his people. And it's every day, story after story after story. Sometimes I'm like, I have tears coming down my cheeks because I'm reading of either great pain from a young orphan child who has gone into an orphanage, yet that's where he met Christ because of our Orphans Reborn program. And so, and then all of a sudden he's living a new life. And the same thing is happening in Ukraine with the widows and their kids, and even the men on the front lines. The chaplains are going in, and they're telling. There was one person, actually, one of the men who was on the front lines, and he told the story of a chaplain who had come, and he said, there's like nothing here for us day in and day out. We are just like trying to survive, and you come and you talk to us and you give us hope, and that makes us want to go on. It makes us want to live. And so that's what's moving. Ukraine is something is happening in Ukraine, and there is definitely hard stuff there, and I hear it a lot, and I cry with them. But God is there, and He is working, and there are so many new believers in the midst of all of this, and so many great stories of His glory, His honor, and it's all through His people that are being raised up, and it's a beautiful story in that.
We are so used to hearing people today say that it's just life is so hard. There's so much division. The entire world is divided. There's these wars going on. We're slowly seeing these wars come to an end. We're really praying that is the same situation that happens in Russia and Ukraine, that this war will come to an end. But I do believe that we are seeing a revival as well. I do believe that we're seeing this in the United States. I've heard about this in Eastern Europe. I've heard about what you're talking about. Oleksandra, before we go, share your testimony of what you've seen when it comes to sharing the gospel in Ukraine.
Yeah, so what I can say, even in the first days of the war, when people were completely shocked and they didn't know where to go, there was no food anywhere, there was no even connection, you couldn't call anyone. People started coming to church, and the church opened their doors, even though many people fled. And I remember in our church, which had like 600 members, there were probably 10 people left only, but they opened the door and they prepared the food from what they had. They sing songs all day long. They invited everyone to come, and they went to, we have like a basement where we have our youth meetings, and they said, it's just your new home, please stay there. So after it all became more stable, and because we have troops in our region, so when they left and everybody returned, like half of the people returned, and church became functioning as usual, these people came and they became, they believed, and then they baptized, and now they are coming on a regular basis. Then we have many women who lost their husband, and I have a friend, she's also a young widow, and she started a ministry telling these women that you have a wound, but only Jesus can heal it. No therapies, no self-help books, only Jesus can do that. And she goes on retreats to the mountains with these women where they can just relax, change their focus, look at the nature, and she speaks how she got healed and that Jesus did that to her. And she also gives practical advice how you can serve these women, just being there, just supporting them, inviting them to Thanksgiving or Christmas dinners, because they're all by themselves and they're abandoned. And when it comes to holidays, it's when they mostly feel this loneliness. But showing them the other perspective, it's what gives hope. And what I appreciate even about our church is that it was so flexible to say, okay, we were oriented on this ministry, but now these people need us, so we're going to start a new ministry. There are many internally displaced people who came from eastern part of Ukraine. They lost their homes, and we started a new ministry for moms who came from those parts, and we said, we can babysit your children for 2 hours, come and join us for a devotional. And they started coming, and they started inviting their friends, and they said, you're the first people who actually not cared only about my children, but about myself, and you ask about my pain. And sometimes those devotionals is only about like talking about the grief, and sometimes they spend 2 hours crying, but they have to tell what they feel to someone. And it's better to be people in the church. And this ministry become that big that we even have like 2 gatherings per day, like in the morning and in the evening.
I want to say, before I let you go, I've been looking at what is behind the revival that we're seeing across the globe. Obviously, after we lost Charlie Kirk, we in the United States said, what is going on? Why are we being so spiritually attacked? And I do think that as the power of Christ rises, then obviously the spiritual attack is stronger. But I did some research on the power of faith. And as I was doing this, I found that there was a study done in New Orleans after Katrina hit, after the big hurricane hit New Orleans. There was a study that was done between 2005 and 2010. And the study showed that the communities that had the highest church membership recovered the fastest. And they found that they recovered the fastest for exactly what you're saying, is that there was a home base for everybody where they felt safe. They could go there, and they always knew that no matter how bad things got, there was somebody that was there to help them, to lift them up. And through that, as they started to rebuild, there was so much support for entrepreneurship and helping people get back on their feet and make something of themselves, that they actually saw the economy grow faster than they'd seen it in any other area. So as I leave you today, I want you to know that what you do, sharing the gospel there, is so much more important than hearts and minds. This is generational growth for these communities and generational growth in Christ. So I know we say, okay, well, you plant one seed and you hope that it creates so many more seeds that come from that. And that is truly what you are doing, because not only are you planting that seed for those families that will then grow in Christ, but they will grow as a community together, and their community will flourish because Christ is there and the Spirit is so strong. So thank you for sharing this. Thank you for telling us this. And as I read that about Katrina, it gave me so much hope for areas like Ukraine, like Israel, like Gaza, like these places that have been destroyed, that once faith, that little seed sprouts, that seed can create so much growth in so many different areas. So before we go, can you just share, Kristi, how people can support the Slavic Gospel Association?
Yeah. So we probably the easiest thing for you to do is to go to our website, which is sga.org. There is story after story of just exactly what we've been talking about, plus more, because we work in other countries as well. You can read the stories, and then there are links there that take you to all of the different ministries, like Orphans Reborn and summer camps and biblical seminaries. We have so much to offer there, just in ways that you can get be partners with us, basically. But more than anything, prayer is something that we all hold very close, and we do constantly lift this up, because this is God's ministry, and He has a plan and a purpose for all of it, and we can see it when we do get these stories back of how He's building His churches over there. And you can, if you want to, you can get involved with a specific church planter who is over there, a missionary pastor who does have one of these local churches that does where the ministry is based out of. And so everything is on the website, though, and just continue to pray for us, continue to pray for Ukraine, and continue to pray for the widows, the single moms, because it's a hard place to be, but we have seen just glorious things that are happening in their lives.
We're called to pray big. We are called to pray specifically. And now, as you have heard this story, if you're listening today and you've heard this story, share this with your children, because just as we've talked about, it's important to spread that seed and spread the gospel. Also, spread that involvement in other people's lives, because that's what we're called to do. Is we're called to lift up the entire church. This is our church, no matter where it is in the world. Lift them up in your prayers. Talk about them at night with your kids. Make sure that there is a connection of believers across the globe. Thank you so much for what you do. I so appreciate having you guys on. Is there anything else you want to say before I let you go?
And one more challenge too, as we're praying for Ukraine. Single moms and widows are here in the United States as well. So look around. We need to be helping them. They're lonely here too. They're dealing with grief, maybe, dealing with not having a babysitter, not having anyone to talk to, not having somebody to go to. The holidays are coming up. So look around if there's anybody in your community, and maybe reach out to them too.
That is so beautiful. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you are connected and that you came on today. Oleksandra and Kristi, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Remember, for this podcast and others, you can go to tudordixon.com, the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast. And you can watch the full video on Rumble or YouTube at Tudor Dixon. And join us next time. Have a blessed day.